feeling stuck, disconnected, or left behind in life? This crisis Gen Z is currently facing has knocked on my door twice, and it sucked. But it is not the end you think it is. It is, in fact, a turning point that, if used well, lays the foundation for the decades ahead of your life. Hiya, I'm Bamboo. This channel is where I share my journey of rewiring the mind, building resilience, finding balance in mind, body, and soul. I hope you walk this path with me and join my journey to becoming Bamboo. Today's topic is a big one for a first video, but it is honestly something I feel really strongly about. And the craziest part is it's not as uncommon as we think it is. In a LinkedIn study, about 75% of young adults said they were either experiencing or had experienced a quarter-life crisis. Yet, so many of us fall into the trap of thinking we're alone. We are the only ones experiencing this. We are not. The quarter-life crisis is defined as a period in your 20s or 30s when you start questioning your choices, your purpose, and who you want to become. And it's not just a passing phase anymore. It has become a generational struggle. Researchers have found that the classic midlife crisis has been pushed back much earlier on in life. Instead of life satisfaction dropping in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, as used to be the case, now life satisfaction drops in your 20s and 30s. Well, in our 20s and 30s. There are many factors that could explain this, and I'm sure you can come up with a few yourself. COVID, the housing market, the job market, the lack of connection, the lack of intimate relationships, whether they're platonic or not, the technology for one, and we could keep going on and on and on. Since 2010, anxiety, depression, suicidal rates have been climbing sharply in our generation. It is alarming, and we need to face it because, frankly, our governments and institutions are not really addressing it. They're honestly falling behind. That is why this conversation right now matters. If the current environment we're living with makes it hard for us to build resilience, it is on us to take ownership of our lives and deal with painful experiences, rising above and beyond those painful experiences, because painful experiences are part of the human experience and we can't avoid them. We need to learn how to create a meaningful life for ourselves and live intentionally in our daily lives. We need to stop drifting and start making actual choices. The most powerful question you can ask yourself is why? Why am I feeling this? Why am I doing this? Why am I running from this? Because asking why means choosing, because asking why means you're paying attention. You're not drifting anymore. And since this is such a common yet rarely talked about experience, let me know if you've experienced a quarter-life crisis. I have made a poll. It's anonymous, and there are a couple of questions to answer there, so I can know a little bit more about what you're experiencing right now, if you don't mind sharing. and I will share those results in a community post or a future video, so that we can talk about it a bit more. I would really appreciate if you do this, because it does prove that it's something that we would have experienced at least once in our lives, regardless, but our generation is kind of having to face it a lot earlier than other people had to. So yeah, it's important to find community in that regard and not feel alone. The link for the poll will be in the description, by the way. To navigate this difficult conversation about quarter life crisis and all that entails, I will be talking about my lowest points, the moments when I asked myself these questions and learned not to ignore the answers. Asking why is not something you do in the middle of a breakdown or when you're in a volatile emotional headspace. You need to find balance first. The reason for that is asking why is being able to be curious and observe your life and what's going on in it. If you are too much in your head, and especially for people who are very self-critical, which I was, so that's why I'm talking about it, it's not a good idea to ask yourself why. You're just going to use it as a weapon to beat yourself up, and that is not how this works. It's not going to work at all. Actually, it's going to have the opposite effect. So before you try and do this yourself, you need to kind of get to that neutral enough space first. To do that, you can seek out therapy, professional help, support from family and friends, or any online resources that help. It doesn't necessarily need to be from a professional, though it sure does help. In my case, I did go to therapy a couple of times and also did hypnotherapy. Well, I did lots of things, but I think therapy is necessary in some regards. It's not necessary for everybody, and it's not necessary for every issue. When I was 20, I hit rock bottom. At the time, I was in my second year of university, and I felt miserable. I was depressed, quite heavily so. The worst part is I had no idea what I was doing. I had chosen a degree that suited my strengths, sure, but I couldn't picture a future with it. And I was plagued with the thoughts of, what if I made the wrong choice? What if I'm not where I was supposed to do? What if I'm wasting my time here? And that thought was terrifying. Fortunately, I was aware of how much I was spiraling, so I did therapy. That did help me notice how much pressure I was putting onto myself, and all of the expectations that were very unrealistic I had for myself, but I didn't have for other people. What really changed for me was when I decided to stop focusing on myself and like all that was going wrong in my life, and decided that if I couldn't show up for me, I would show up for somebody else. And so I decided to start tutoring, and that decision saved my life. And this is like what I needed, the momentum I needed to start picking my way back up. Then I made this seemingly random, impulsive decision to sign up to train as an RTT hypnotherapist. By the way, this is my certification right here, so at least you know I graduated. But it was really completely out of left field for me. I, first of all, did not know what hypnotherapy was. I was not interested in therapy as a career or anything. And I just seen it on YouTube. It was in my mind and it kept being stuck there. And I made this completely crazy, impulsive choice to just sign up. I was accepted, and again, it was really expensive. So it was such a weird decision that I made. And I was like, I don't know why I did this, but like I did this. I was interested in it, but I was like, this is such a weird thing for me to do. But turns out that decision to sign up to train as a RTT hypnotherapist was not random at all. It actually completely transformed my life and saved my life, and also one of my family members, my mother, who was going through a hard time. And so, had I not signed up to train as an RTT hypnotherapist, I would have never built the skills that I needed to help her and help myself through the difficult time that we went through. And that moment when I could help my mother and I was able to help other family friends transform their lives and get rid of bad habits that had been hindering their life, I was like really hooked. I became obsessed with learning more about mental health, physical health. Like, I was looking up podcasts, YouTube videos, anything that could feed my mind about all of this. By the way, you can see a couple of those books over here, other ones down there. I'm only starting my collection, and I don't really have the money to really read all that I want to read, and I don't necessarily have the time for it either. But I'm on my journey there. But I also didn't trust myself enough. Once I graduated, I decided to do what was safe and enrolled into a master's in education. And because of financial difficulties, I chose to work to help out my mom and also feed myself. And so I was balancing doing a master's and working full time as a middle school teacher. This didn't really go well, especially since now that I had found my purpose, I had found what made me feel alive. Doing something else was just impossible. It just paled in comparison. So basically, I was way in over my head. I didn't know how to deal with middle schoolers. I didn't know how to deal with a classroom environment because I had been doing one-on-ones so far. I had to deal with a master's degree. I was also teaching a subject I wasn't trained for. So, yeah, that was a lot for one person to handle in their 20s because I started teaching at 21. So that was a great first initiation into the world of work for the first time. And so I guess you can guess what happened. That wasn't sustainable. Basically, what ended up happening was that I was exhausted, I was anxious all the time, I was completely burnt out. And because I was very stubborn, I still am, I will admit that, I'm trying to be better at it. I didn't listen to all of the signals that my body was sending me, and so I kept pushing for a year and a half. And what ended up happening was that I just broke down at some point. I was totally burnt out and depressed again. I couldn't even bring myself to go to work. I ended up having an emotional breakdown in my bathroom and couldn't put my foot outside the door to leave. I ended up on sick leave for the remainder of the school term, and that sick leave was brutal, especially that first month. I felt so low, so down. I had terrible brain fog. I couldn't focus. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. And I struggled with eating consistently, sleeping consistently. I ended up taking medication, which I had been resisting um, before. And honestly, it helped. And after that, I was just like, well, I guess I know what I need to do now, because there is no way I'm going back into teaching. I know how that went. So I know what my purpose is. I know what makes me feel alive. And no matter how crazy and completely insane it is or unrealistic, I was like, well, I don't have any other choice but to chase it now. You see, the mistake I made was to choose something safe over the purpose I had discovered. And that nearly destroyed me. Because deep down, I already knew what my purpose was. I just hadn't trusted myself enough to follow it. To sum it all up, a quarter life crisis is painful. But pain is part of the human experience. It's what makes us grow. Pain forces us to stop, to feel, to confront what we've been running from. If we don't, it will come back and bite us in the ass so much harder. So ask yourself why. Ask it often. Ask it with curiosity and not judgment. Because remember, asking why isn't about beating yourself up. Sometimes the best thing you can do is find stability first through professional help, with therapy, with the support from your family and your friends, whatever that looks like for you. Asking yourself why becomes really powerful, because then it comes from a place of compassion, not judgment. That is when the shift happens, when you start choosing and stop drifting. If this resonated with you or helped you in any way, shape, or form, I would really appreciate it if you could comment it down below. I would like to know what you thought of this first video. Any feedback would be welcome. Also, tell me if you have any suggestions for video about. I have a couple of videos lined up already, and actually, the video I've got coming up is one that gives a more personal, in-depth insight into how I figured out who I am. Do subscribe if you want to stick around for these types of conversation, and if you want to keep joining me on this journey to becoming bamboo.